I'll call us to order for our March 24th, 2023, 3:30 quarterly partnership meeting. So welcome everyone that is here and those who are attending. I got the question just before coming over if these meetings are public, and they are public. The full partnership body meets quarterly, and then the executive committee meets monthly. But all of those meetings are public, and public comment are taken at each of the meetings. So I encourage folks, the normal meetings, when we hold them at the Water Street Center, are also online, so you can attend virtually if you wanted to listen in to how the meetings are going. All to order. I think that qualifies as a welcome. I'm going to butcher my instructions here. I don't think I have any introductions to make. We should all.
We do have one new member.
We do have one new member.
William Park.
Oh, William. Oh, that's right. We took that vote. So welcome, sir.
Thank you.
First official partnership meeting.
I'll get a name tag at some point.
Yes,
Next meeting.
That'll make you official. But welcome, sir. We're happy to have you here. And actually, that point about new membership, we will have a little bit of a conversation about that towards the end as we get to our roundtable. First item of business, public comment. Is there anybody here today who wishes to give public comment to the group? This is the most public we've had
Ever.
And there's no one online. Forward and close public. Oh, we're online today too? There's no one online. Very good. Under our consent agenda, which is an action item, we have the minutes of the September 28th, 2022 meeting, the December 5th, 2022 meeting, and then the January 23, which is the profit and loss handout in the packet printed today. That's the final page.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Hold please. On the September 28th minutes, on the line 7. Okay, well, let's start over. Please forgive me, guys. Okay. It shows that I was here via Zoom call. Okay, I have to start here, but it doesn't have an X showing that I was actually present. But under section 7, it says that I actually made an introduction for myself. So unless I
Apparently you were there.
osmosis or whatever.
So we need to add an X, is what you said.
Affirmative.
I amend my motion.
On September 28th, we are adding an X, which denotes that, yeah, I see what you mean. You're noted as an online participant, but not present, so.
Exactly.
What we were trying to say.
He's invisible.
Sometimes I'm present, I'm not present, so.
I am not.
Get it. All right, I heard that the motion was amended to include that in correction. Any other corrections? And Anthony, will you do your second for the amendment? Second.
I'm a guest in September. I don't think this. I'm an alternate for Margaret.
Let's see, you're saying that you're not included there?
No, I was a guest, which it says I was there, but as a guest, so long as I was included in.
I'll make that change.
Thank you.
All right, we have our second.
Call the question.
All right, so we have two amendments that are to be made, and that was accepted in the motion.
Sure.
All corrections.
Yep.
All right, and second, any further discussion?
No.
Very good. We'll just do a roll or a vote by acclamation. If all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the consent agenda is approved and passed. That will take us to number 4, presentations. This is on our strategic plan update.
Yeah.
Ian, are you doing that?
I'm just going to talk very quickly. We officially have a approved proposal from Virginia Housing, so we're able to now submit a formal application to them. And if you remember, this is for the implementation of the strategic plan. So this will be a membership review, another bylaw revision by a consultant, and then a fee structure review, among other things. So we're gonna be getting that application in by the end of next week and hopefully starting with our consultant, who is Amy Niesenson, is one of the Virginia Housing designated consultants, but has done a lot of really good work across the state with other housing organizations. So very excited to get that into Virginia Housing, and I have a very good feeling that it will be approved by them. So that is the strategic plan.
And for those who are in attendance and don't regularly attend the meeting, so the strategic planning process occurred, that has been done. The next steps and the things that or the action steps we were going to take coming out of the strategic planning process allowed for utilization of consultants to help us actually implement the strategic plan. So to date, a couple of the things that have happened that advanced the strategic plan, we formalized 2 committees, the data committee and the communications committee. Those are already up, functional, and in process. The executive committee, as part of the strategic plan, has been working on a bylaws revision, which I believe the target date for approval on that is June for the full partnership. We've done most of that work. The second half of the executive committee's piece, or the whole partnership, I suppose, is the questions that you'll see listed under the roundtable, or the first question there anyway. The consultant is going to help us determine, do we have, let's look at the membership, who's sitting at the table, both at the executive committee level and the full partnership, with the idea of, do we have everybody we want there? Do we need others included? So the consultant is going to help us analyze, study that, and then game plan, how do we go out and find a new membership that could come and join us in this effort. We felt that the executive committee felt that to take that task on as the executive committee was a little bit out of our wheelhouse. So since we now have the funds available to do it, that we're going to move forward with that. So that work, forget the target for that to be completed.
Well, I got pushed back a little bit, so
Because of the
ASAP,
grant,
but
right, but this year it'll get underway.
definitely by the end of this year.
Well, let me ask the question. Is it relevant that we get any new members lined up for the beginning of the fiscal year? Is there any magic to that?
Well,
Which is July 1, right?
certainly anyone can weigh in. I would think that we shouldn't hesitate for the end of just because we're bringing them on to do the study and analysis. If we think we have somebody that should join or we want to join, we're going to take advantage of that. I think the executive committee can figure that out under the current bylaws that we have. It's just a matter of making sure that, we might say, oh, well, such and such wants to join, we all think that's a good idea, but in the bigger organizational health kind of look, who else do we need that aren't currently there? So I don't think we hold or pause bringing anybody in or making changes, meanwhile learning how do we do it strategically to get new membership.
So the purpose of my question, initially, we were going to try to have all of this in place such that by the beginning of the next fiscal year, we might have an expanded board lined up. And it doesn't seem like we're going to be there.
No, just
And
because
does
of
it
the
matter?
yeah.
The grants got pushed back a
Right,
quarter.
okay.
Yeah, that was an interesting process right at the end of the year, but then it got delayed.
Yeah.
Do we have open seats currently? I forget. I know
Not based on the current, structure, because now
The health,
we have, which one's open?
the health.
We do.
We're gonna have that be filled hopefully by the next commission meeting. We've been working with, I believe, Shannon Lee at the health department. Oh, hi, sorry, she's right there. Sorry, I should have. We'll be, we're gonna put that to the commission at the next commission meeting, so she can start attending as a full board member, I guess, for first meeting would be June, so.
We'll make sure the minutes show that you were
Yes.
here.
With an X next to it, got it. Got it.
Full vote of support for.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I
please.
jump in? So, along the new membership, there may be a couple people who do not know who William Park is. William, would you mind introducing yourself?
I mean, there's maybe like one people in this area that may not know who you are, but take a minute to tell you who you are.
Yeah, okay, Kevin, thanks for putting me on the
It's
spot,
Keith,
yeah.
but that's okay.
No, that's fine. Again, I'll have a name tag next time, Kevin. Keith. Anyway, yeah, my name's William Park, President of Pinnacle Construction Development Corporation here in Charlottesville. And I guess we've been in business over 30 years, have done probably our first affordable housing deal was back in 1992, possibly using lot of things we talked about today, low-income housing tax credits, working with VHDA. We have a development company, a construction company, property management company, and we're also mortgage bankers for VHDA. So I'm excited that I was asked to be on here. Hopefully I can every now and then participate a little bit, and certainly look forward to meeting everybody and working with them. So thanks again.
So he fills
Appreciate
the
Keith.
slot of the private developer role. Just an editorial comment. The for-profit descriptor today. Private sector might be more appropriate.
Thank you, William.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Appreciate it.
Any other comments or things relative to the strategic plan? All right, see how, I was hoping it was going to be an hour-long meeting. This is what I mentioned in the opening comments today, that the roundtable a lot of times is where we get to share a lot of our interesting things that are going on. We did propose 2 questions to help. It's not that you must answer these questions. But to the line of who are we missing from the group, that we're open to suggestions to hear others, that as the strategic plan commences. And then if you would like to share any takeaways from today, obviously that's a great question that you'd like to share. But then we're also looking for you to give your general update like we do during our roundtable about what's happening in your area, your world, that you want to share for the good of the group. And before I begin, I just want to make sure that I do not forget, but I want to thank especially Stacy.
Where's
Stacy.
She's at home.
She's here today, but Stacy, Gretchen, and Jesse as our events committee did a lot of work to did the work to put this committee together, obviously with assistance of the staff from TJPDC, Christine Jacobs, Ian, and Lori, I swear Lori, I almost said Laura, but Lori. You know, this was a big task. We received updates from the executive committee that it was coming here. It's hard to believe it's already coming on that fast. We'll start planning for the next one, but thank you all for your effort and energy to make this day happen. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So what I'll do is I'm just going to move around the room. I'll go from my left to the right, if that's all right. Mr. Park, we had your introduction. Would you like to share anything in your first roundtable, sir?
No, only that it's never been more difficult to do affordable housing than it is now. You know, I could give you umpteen reasons, all of them which we probably discussed today, but it's just tough. So, and there is no, that I can see, one size fits all. It's going to be a combination of doing things like this where we as a private sector work with the public sector, with the politicians to figure out all the things we can do to try to break down barriers to make it more affordable. And, you know, part of that a lot of times is speed and consistency. And as a developer, we just need to know things are consistent and the process can happen in a timely manner, because so many things can happen with interest rates or you know, supply chains, or, I mean, who would ever thought we'd have a pandemic in our lifetime, right? And obviously that's tough, but I just think the more consistency we can have with respect to breaking down barriers to zoning and make it more open, to make it easier to provide the housing, I guess, right? And so I'll get off my soapbox. Probably wasn't a good thing I was first, but would love to discuss it more any other time, right?
That's why you're at the table, man.
Well, I'm not sure why I'm at the table. So.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, excuse me. I grew up in Indiana, and the programs that you guys, well, I won't say you guys, I want to say the state of Virginia has in place now was nothing like what they had in place when I was a kid, you know, 4, 5, 6 years old, and my mom was struggling, you know, very low paying job and whatnot. Only thing we could probably get was, this is way before Section 8 even came into play. You know, I'm in my 50s now, so, you know, it was a long time ago. The only thing we got was some kind of subsidy so we could stay in a low income housing, what they called it back then. And it was primarily projects, as they called them back then, projects. And then we had to move to Chicago, live in Cabrini Green, because that's where they said we could live. Because my mom was very, very poor. She wasn't educated the way I am now. So when I see that those programs that are available, like the person that was sitting next to you, he was talking about those.
Yep.
was it
503 and 504
Yes.
already,
504.
502.
That was not available back then. So to see that it's come this far, to me, it's somewhat of a blessing, shall I say. I mean, I don't need it myself now. I bet I'm educated, I have a great job, I have a great career. So I don't need those things. But it's great to be able to tell those who are not as fortunate as I am that there's something that they can look to so they can get into the place where I am. So that's what I took from it.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you, sir. Supervisor Rutherford?
I had a great time. Keith did a really good job.
No internet?
I didn't talk much about it. I wore the hat though, so I didn't have to say it. I'm just glad that we had the conference coming back so that we can maintain energy. I think trying to get more planning commissioners here would be an ambition, not in this being, but at these events. I think that's one thing I could have done a little bit better on pressuring our planning commission. I'm happy we had our board and happy we got Margaret, but really we need to start pushing those individuals and whatever that looks like. And I don't know if that means we do it on a day, because a lot of those folks work too. Right? They don't usually make those day compromising decisions like we often are expected. It was really good. I think one big thing that I notated was it didn't matter who was speaking. There was a lot of consistent points, whether it related to workforce development, the barriers to entry, or just like we just need more inventory and throw your hands up, just make it simple. I really appreciate seeing that narrative consistently throughout everywhere. So, but that's the only thing I'd say is I would definitely next year prioritize beating up my planning commissioners.
Who outraged who?
Huh?
Did we ever settle who outraged who?
Who knows who, Ian?
You don't put Ian.
Oh, he's not here.
Oh, he left, okay, well,
Not
we
here
can't
right
settle
now.
that now, so.
For those who are wondering, Jesse and I had a competition about who would outraise money for you. I'm gonna give it
Are
to
you
you.
gonna give it to me?
I'm gonna give it to
I don't.
you. Yeah. He's gonna take it anyway, even if I didn't give it to him.
That's true. Already took it.
Are you all done?
Yeah.
Are you
We're done, we're done. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I like the more housing opportunities because affordable housing and even workforce housing just sets off so many negative things. And I like that particular statement. And I thoroughly enjoyed Mr. Grant and how he talked about home. He just kind of gave you a real good feeling about home. Maybe some people didn't have a good feeling about home, but I did because I was away from home a long time. And when I came back home, back to Fluvanna County, and I've been there ever since. I'm a short timer because I am leaving the board at the end of this year after my 16 years on the board. So that means I have a lot of catch-up things I want to do. So Ned, you and Keith need to come out to the board and give your presentation. And Kim and I, Kim Fluvanna Louisa Housing, and I'm on her board. Wanda is here, she works for Fluvanna, she represents Fluvanna. We need to be a part of what you present because our board is not on board. O'Brien is pretty much know what's going on. And we need to get on board because we have a lot of things that we can do with Fluvanna Louisa Housing. But when you have them to come forward and give you a PowerPoint that just everything that they're doing for people, septic systems, roofs, repairs, because we have communities that are like the ones you were talking about, so that they can stay in their home or get them into a better home. And you have her come forward and ask for the minimum amount for the budget, and we cut her by 10,000. We're not understanding, so you all need to come as soon as you can, and so that we can have time. And so you can feel the questions and you can get a feel for how our board members are feeling. And then you can kind of know what you can push forward into that accounting. We've got a lot of things that we need to prepare people for first before we can move forward. And we have our Colonial Circle, which your buildings are coming up already. That's on the board, and we are, it's fortunate that we even have Colonial Circle to come. And so that's where we are. And so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was at the first conference that you had, but this one was planned out so well. The breaks were wonderful because you have a little bit of time to meet people and talk about what you were doing and so forth. So I thank you. So are you going to have another one in the future? Is it like every 2 years, every 3 years, or do you have an idea?
We need to give Ian a break.
Let's ask for Ian next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Great.
So my role the last few months on the executive board, because we didn't have a Charlottesville representative, has been to say how excited we are at the progress that's being made, but within the city with the rezoning. But we have Councilor Payne here today, so I'll let him pick up on that thing. I sat in on the missing middle, and I'm still processing this. Arlington just on Wednesday night took all of their suburban lots and said, instead of single family, you can build up to 6 units on every lot in the entire city.
Really?
Do they ban single family
Virginia.
zoning?
So there is no protected single family area whatsoever in Arlington. Now the suits haven't come yet, but it was such a bold move, not just a duplex or a fourplex, but they actually made the decision, for those of you that went in the session, to go all the way to sixplex, which is effectively a little apartment building. So just picture what kind of change that would represent to take every single family lot that exists in a jurisdiction and say you can, build up to 6 times what there is today. I don't think our infrastructure could handle 6 times what's here today, but it was an incredibly bold move. And to do it citywide is what I'm really, my head's spinning about. But for those of you that mixed that was the headline of the day for me.
Does that include the area over there by the Pentagon City where that library is? That
Any single, I think that's still part of Arlington.
It's part of Arlington County.
Yeah, the county, not a city.
That's right, the county, it is a county,
Wow.
but,
There aren't that many places that you can do that on without, so maybe they didn't think it was gonna be a huge impact. Right?
It's congested as it
You
is.
take a 60-foot lot, you can do give
do
me
a
a
lot of
60-foot lot and
things.
tell me
Go
I can
vertical.
put 4.
Build up, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm queuing up Mr. Payne that may want to pick up on that.
Do it.
That was my takeaway.
I took away that we have a lot of work to do, so, I just made a lot of notes on what I wanted to bring back to Nelson and start working on first. A lot of great sessions. I also enjoyed the breaks. I also have tried to stop people from saying affordable and workforce housing as well, because it does point to people, and then other people want to say, oh, those kind of people, and then it kind of takes away from the conversation about just a house a variety of housing for a variety of people, you know what I mean? So it deflates the otherism that people wanna have about, you know, oh, well, those kind of people, they're not like me. They don't know how to park in their driveway, you know, or in their garage, or they never put their mower away. So, so that was a big thing for me. In terms of people that should be on this board or in this group, and we may have this covered, but I think some of the people, especially rural people who are in a position, you know, maybe the people that we serve, I think maybe we don't have enough rural representation, you know, and we're small, we're scattered, but we probably have louder voices than the people in this city.
What?
I don't know, we don't have, you know, we definitely don't have the pockets, but you know, I think it's really great that this organization does give equal voice to, you know, all of us, and that's really important because there are some very different, you know, challenges that we have in the different localities.
Mr. Smith?
So thank you, Moselle, for noting the 2019 versus today. I also thought that this was very well done, and it seemed to be very timely, and to Greg's comment, that was a 5-0 vote, by the way. So that was a unanimous vote. It was pretty bold, and I moderated that, so I'd rather be lucky than good in any day of the week, and I just happened to get lucky that it made my job so much easier. But I want to talk a little bit my county and William and Moselle for a moment, to talk about, you know, that's an example of these 4 pillars working, right? So we've got a Colonial Circle project. William is building correct me if I get any of this data wrong, William. It's 125 units, and I believe you're doing an AMI of 60%, if I'm not. And that happened because of Moselle's board, because Moselle offered some tax incentives, for lack of a better term. So that is where the public body and the private sector and the nonprofits and so forth and so on all came together. So I'm proud of, as a, what do we, how do we pronounce it? Fluco.
Flying shoes.
Fluco. I'm a Fluco with a Brooklyn accent. But in any event, how this works, and that's a prime example of it, and that was just a great takeaway, and I wanted to share that with everybody here, that this actually can happen. It just requires people talking to one another, and that was my takeaway today. It was a lot of two-way conversation. And I think that's it, Mr. Chairman.
A lot of things I could say. I think I'll probably focus. I mean, I've enjoyed the day as well. I think that having people come together to both commiserate the difficulty of doing this work, but also share ideas and brainstorm together is always fruitful. And I want to just provide a little bit of an update on the work that we as an organization have in progress, just so folks have that on their radar too. For those of you who have driven by Friendship Court recently, phase 1 is well into construction. The first new homes will be opening up in the July timeframe, and the remainder by the end of the year. And as a reminder, that's 46 replacement homes for 46 existing families within Friendship Court, plus 60 new affordable homes as well, from 30 to 80% EMI. Phase 2 will start construction ideally in January, February next year, and then that will be another 100 homes or so. Hickory Hope Apartments, which is a project in partnership with Habitat at the Southwood, in the Southwood community, will be 121 new homes. We hope to start construction in April, May this year, pending getting through these last hurdles around funding. But May is what we're aiming for. We just submitted a 9% LIHTC application for a development in partnership again with Habitat at the MACA site on Park Street in north downtown in Charlottesville. We just saw the preliminary rankings and we're top of the list. That's not a guarantee, but it's a great place to start. And so that'll be 62 new rental homes, and then Habitat would have 20 or so new Habitat homes as that partnership as well, if we can pull that off. but that's I'm really optimistic now based on how the rankings just came out. For those of you who are in the UVA session, we as an organization just submitted our response to the RFP for both of the sites that were highlighted. Fingers crossed for all of us to see. We have a bunch of other things actually in the hopper, and hopefully be able to announce a couple of other things that are on the horizon here relatively shortly. I highlight all that because I do want to highlight some of the successes that are out there, and some of the progress that's going on. And we could not have done any of those without partnership with the city and the county in particular. We would not have done them without that. I mean, they're just hands down. And I will echo what William said, it is harder than ever to do this work. And it is largely due to the financial context that we all operate within. But I'm optimistic again that with continued partnership, we can continue to grow that list.
Do I understand correctly that all 3 of the UVA sites will require zoning?
That is correct.
Actions?
The North Fork site, which is the large site near the airport, UVA has been engaged in a rezoning process for some time now. The stated comment is they did not release that large site because they wanted to complete that rezoning before they released it as an RFP stage. But the other 2 sites, the downtown site, if it were built today, it would require rezoning. But instead we are, as you well know, the city is rezoning itself, right, or presumably, itself right now. And if that comes to fruition, then that zoning would be probably sufficient, would not require rezoning afterwards.
Well, that's good.
The county site will require rezoning.
So heads up,
That'd be my say.
anybody that happens to be involved in county zoning, heads up.
Oh, yeah.
Councilor Payne? Well, I guess first, who are we missing from the group? Top to mind with Shelby Edwards having left FAR, I think someone from Public Housing Association residents, and in addition to that, given the importance of the housing authority and development in the city, I think a representative from CRHA would be appropriate as well. Main takeaway, like others, I enjoyed the day. I found it good to be able to just run in and talk with folks. The big takeaway is we're not going to be able to do this unless we're all able to collaborate together. No organization or locality has the tools or knowledge to do it on their own. And that kind of every solution is yes and. There's no one thing that's going to be the answer. And that we have to be really intentional about focusing on affordable housing at 0 to 30% AMI, 30 to 60%, 60 to 80, and look at every single one of those levels. Because in Charlottesville, for example, I think a lot of people, the cost of living is so extreme now. Over half the city is below 60% area median income. And when you're talking about someone who works full-time making $20 an hour, if they're a single parent, they're at 30 to 40% area median income. And I think a lot of people don't realize that that's where we are now in a lot of housing solutions. If you're talking about 80% AMI or above, you're missing the majority of your community in terms of the housing need. And the final takeaway is, I think, I know everyone here is on the same board, but how do we kind of challenge our own localities and our own boards? Charlottesville, a city of 50,000 people, is investing $10 million a year in affordable housing. What's that on a per capita basis compared to other localities? We're rewriting our entire zoning code and increasing density citywide. What are other localities doing with their zoning code and density? Because the truth is, if Charlottesville acts alone, this is a regional problem. And if we're not all acting in concert, we're not going to make nearly the big impact that we could. And I know everyone here is on the same board, but kind of, I'm thinking about how to rise to challenge my board, my locality, and how can we all do that? So.
I just want to echo what's been said already about the missing middle approval in Arlington. I find that incredibly hopeful, that a place that I considered probably one of the last places that would jump on board with approving that missing middle and making it by right. That's kind of incredible. But I also understand what Mr. Payne is saying, that alone isn't sufficient. that's going to have to require some, you're gonna have to pair those zoning changes with some affordable housing initiatives that drive the right kind of availability. So, that was a takeaway from today. I thought the other thing that for me was kind of an interesting takeaway in the college towns and affordable housing, or the discussion about what they have in the zoning ordinance in Williamsburg, and I guess also in Blacksburg, regarding how many unrelated people can be housed in a house, a rental house, for example, so that it provides sort of a natural ceiling on how many people you can pack in there, and it also puts up a bit of a barrier to all of the buyouts, the investors that come in and buy those things out and crank the rents up and all those sort of things. It's not something I'd ever really thought of before, so I thought it was an interesting approach.
So Ron, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, in the city of Charlottesville, it cannot exceed 5. They actually have a rule that says that. How it's enforced is a different story.
That's, yeah, most zoning is complaint-based enforcement, so.
Yeah, you
I
can't
don't
enforce
know
it.
how effective it really is. You said Williamsburg was 3, and Blacksburg, I think, was also 3 or 4.
The concept of co-living is becoming a lot more popular, especially on the West Coast, where it's that 5 unrelated individuals living in a house. And, they do that in Lynchburg currently, quite heavily. Figuring out the kitchen dishes, I haven't quite considered, but.
It's just more with pots and pans.
I know. It's ramen noodles for me anyway, so.
I'll just add that we have that in Elmore County as well, and the problem is enforcement. And it was really funny because I went up to the folks at Blacksburg and I said, but how do you enforce it? And he said, yeah, it's really hard. But he said, what we did do was we hired a detective as an enforcement agent.
Oh my God.
And that has helped a lot.
Oh, wow.
Just to share that.
Zoning cops.
So I went back to Jody and I said, we need to hire a detective. Just saying. I really enjoyed the day. As much as I wanted to join Jesse's group, I decided it was more important for me as a Jack Jip representative to follow the University of Virginia, because it's always good to know what UVA is doing, right? So that was very interesting. I enjoyed it very much. I agree with Jesse about our planning commission. We really had, Albemarle County had 1 planning commissioner here, but he was on the panel. So I think it would behoove all of us to work on our planning commissioners for the next year, or the next time we do this. Just to let you all know that the Regional Transit Partnership work right now is really continuing around the governance work. What governance would look like if we had an authority, right, the transit authority. And we're really getting into the nuts and bolts about who's gonna wanna participate. Is it gonna be just Albemarle and Charlottesville, or is some of the outlying communities gonna wanna join us? And my thought is we really need to educate the surrounding counties about the importance of transit and what transit could really do for those communities. I think there's still a little disconnect with that work, but consultants are working hard on that, meeting with different groups. They will be reaching out to all the surrounding communities, the consultants, to talk about that governance work and what it would look like. We also put out the RFP for the Albemarle County microtransit. So we'll be hiring that, of course it runs through CAT, but we will be hiring that particular company. We're hoping to roll that microtransit work out. We're saying by hopefully August, not sure whether it will really happen, but August anyway. And I guess that's it.
Define what that is.
I'm sorry.
Microtech.
So,
In context of.
Albemarle County will be rolling out a pilot. And what the micro transit looks like is, you think about the Uber model. So, but it's under the auspices of government, right? It's not, so we'll have the pilot will focus on 29 North, where our population center is, and Pantops, another population center. And if you think about areas or circles that will have small buses, not the really big buses, but small buses, more like the jaunt model, right? And people will be able to call just like you would through an Uber model or a Lyft model. And the buses will be available and they'll be able to pick you up. You can schedule or you can call real time. And we're excited about the pilot. We'll see how it goes. It's gonna be important for our community to actually use it. Because, if nobody's using it, then.
What's the fee model on it?
I'm sorry?
What's the fee model on it? The fee.
Of the fee model,
Yeah.
yes. Well, for right now, it'll be, we're paying for it, right? That's the pilot, but we'll see where we go with that. Yeah. Transit right now is free in this community anyway.
Yeah.
All of the transit systems are free right now. Because we're trying to get our ridership up and coming out of the pandemic.
Right.
Did you say when it was starting?
We're hoping it'll start in August.
So you're gonna do some advertising about it?
Absolutely,
Like you're
part
gonna
of it's gonna be marketing, we have.
getting
money
Kevin
for
on the
it.
bus, right?
Yeah.
And then following him around and then. I know, he's in Kevin, so I'm just teasing you. I'm just teasing you. I know it's Keith, I know it's Keith, I'm just teasing you.
Thank you, William.
Everybody. Kevin's very
Thank
nice. Better at taking it. Oh,
So-
sorry.
So we'll just roll out those two areas with this microtransit pilot, and it'll focusing on 29 North and Pantops.
I think that would be great to get somebody really on the bus and, news there and everything. That'd be
Trying to see
fun.
how we'll work it out.
Cool, great.
Mr. Harris? Also very much enjoyed the day. I love the layout it felt easeful and flowing the networking opportunities. The numerous ones were really nice as well. In terms of who's missing, I would also agree with Councilor Payne, CRHA, I think is a really important addition. And maybe to consider, I know in the county it's a little bit of a different setup because it's a comfortable part of county government, so maybe that's not as important, but in our work with homelessness, we've seen just tremendous impact from deeper partnerships with both the Office of Housing at the county and also with CRHA for the subsidy programs that they have and the housing choice voucher programs. And you would think that it would have that impact, but we've never seen this type of partnership, and it's huge. And especially, I think some of my takeaways from the day were there's a lot to do to get there that's longer term, but what can we do in the immediate? And it's subsidizing the existing housing. And how do we work within the constraints that exist there? And so having kind of that, having that viewpoint on the board, I think is important because vouchers are such a huge part of making existing. I mean, it's the only way to make existing housing affordable. And other things that kind of came up from some conversations, which I thought were really interesting, was with Jesse's conversation that I really enjoyed about the constraints with the workforce, but then I thought about, well, does prefabricated homes, does that provide one solution for constraint of the workforce? And talking with Philip at the county, they just approved, I think, prefabricated homes as an acceptable place to use a housing choice voucher, which I thought is tremendous.
Okay.
And so, I don't know, just leaning into different modalities, and I think is really important to meet the need without needing the workforce necessarily, which is its own problem. But to the point where I was just talking with Sam Shukas from Fredericksburg, and they actually have a new project where they're building, I think, 50 tiny homes dedicated to people who used to be homeless, basically. And I think they're all prefabricated as well. She said that they could be built and put in place for $59,000 each, which is just tremendous to think about. So lots of new ideas, coming through. Maybe that's not as long-term as maybe I once thought it was, but I just thought those were promising. And then finally, the last one, I was having a conversation with Greg and some other folks about, there's a good book, Jesse's reading this book, it's called Homelessness is a Housing Problem by Greg Colburn. I highly recommend it. Obviously, you all know this to be true, but he did the research to back it up, and it's really powerful. And one of the powerful things that I'm left with was that we found across the country that the rates of homelessness were predictable by the rates of poverty, but inversely so. So places with more poverty had less homelessness. Places with less poverty had more homelessness, and it's all because of the housing costs in those locations. So with more poverty, you have lower housing costs, you have lower homelessness. In places like San Francisco, LA, you have, well, San Francisco, let's say, you have lower poverty rates, but you have skyrocketing homeless rates, and it's be all tied to the cost of housing. So again, things we know, but research at that level, it was really, really powerful tool to show how directly housing, the whole ecosystem of housing impacts homelessness. So anyways, look that up if you're interested to learn more. Homelessness is a housing problem. It came out about a year ago.
Oh, interesting. I'm sorry,
No,
I didn't
that's
interrupt you. It just occurred to me that whatever you want to call that, because I'm not a techie person, but what you all used on the screen today, where you showed the jobs and the people going, the people that couldn't afford and how the jobs just drop off, that is a great tool, and I'd love to have access to that tool in Albemarle County for some of our work.
Well, that's Ian Baxter's work.
There you go.
Yeah, we're trying to have that be something that we can put in the demographic and job information for our region. So
I'd love to take that to my citizen
Yeah.
advisory committee meetings and show it, and so if we can have access to that, it would be great. The first time, Ned had told me about it, but it's the first time I've ever seen it, and it is cool.
Yeah, the current one would be specific to that area. So
Yes.
it would take our local cost of living, wages, everything in the area, and it would be more specific to it.
Yeah.
So what makes the cross out happen, the data behind it, is what we need to get specific to our region.
Okay.
Which
That-
doesn't exist. The one you saw on the screen was for the DC region.
Right, but it would really be great to have
Oh, yeah,
that data,
yeah.
and then to be able to use it in our meetings.
But our cost of living is such that those numbers are
Yeah,
really
it's
not that
Probably not far
Yeah.
off for us.
Ian and I have been taking a dive into it. It's pretty darn close.
Yeah, I would imagine.
It's a great visual.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Harry. To share from my perspective, there's one thing I'm going to try to do this is keep my thinking above the line. In the UVA presentation, and I'm not picking on UVA, the phrase was used that I've heard and I've said myself as an elected official over the years, where, and the phrase is, well, you can't please everyone.
Yeah.
And it was in discussion of saying, well, we're targeting, 60 to 80% AMI. And when the point that was being made was, well, what are we doing to get deeper to 50%, 40%, 30% AMI? And it would be real easy for someone like me, who's on an elected body, to say, well, you can't please everyone. And when I think of, in that particular context, who the everyone is that we just said we can't please, that's a challenge to me as a policymaker to figure out, all right, you're right, but we do have to take care of everyone. And maybe some of the people we can't please are on the other end of the spectrum in how we take care of everyone. So that's a takeaway for me today, that when I heard that phrase and I've said that phrase, I thought, all right, that's a challenge to me. At least in my role, to try to figure out by this time next year, if we have another one, if this is an annual event, to say, all right, what has my growth been on that particular thought? So that's what I'm reflecting on and thinking about as I come out of today. I also thought a lot about what I was able to kind of note and remember from the first conference that we had. And remember, Anthony, what it would take to end homelessness in our area. And then I, remember a couple years ago, Anthony, your presentation at the governor's housing conference. And then Premier Circles come online. So just your organization in particular has made such strides since the last time we had Coming Home versus Coming Back Home. The UVA initiative was not on our radar when we held this conference the first time. That's a big deal. Housing policies, like in Albemarle, we voted on housing Albemarle. But what I'm seeing now, and maybe it was a lack of awareness then, but it seems like the region, the jurisdictions in the region are all having housing policy and housing discussions in a way that I don't recall occurring back then. Still being a member of regional committees, it wasn't being talked about. Keith, I always love to say that Keith, a few TJPDC meetings ago, he served on the TJPDC for 12 plus years, and said we had a robust, after an update about the housing partnership work that Ian gave, it kicked off, it started with, I think Fluvanna County actually, Tony. And we went on to it was a long, each locality conversation about housing. And I think, Albemarle, we were at the end, I know Michael joined in at the end, but all of the regions were having the conversation about housing and the different takes on it. And Keith had said in 12 years of being on the commission, I've never seen a conversation about housing occur like that at the commission level. So that's something I marked that didn't occur back in 2019. I think the partnership is you don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but when I think of who are we missing from the group, in my mind, I get that we want all sectors and certain sectors represented, but I always answer that question, whoever wants to be involved. If they want to be at the table and they care about housing and they know about it, then let's get them here. And just because there's not necessarily a category that they fill doesn't necessarily mean that you keep them out. So that's what I would offer to that. Specific in Albemarle County, on the 19th, and Stacy has rejoined the room. Stacy, you weren't here when I thanked you, Ian and Jesse and Gretchen for putting today together. So thank you. Just want to offer that while you're here. But Stacy will be in front of the Board of Supervisors on the 19th with our developer incentive program, which is one big hurdle that we need to get figured out to get Housing Albemarle in force and get moving. It's one of probably a couple thousand policy initiatives that's in that document, but it's a big one. And we're looking forward to having that, just so that folks know this is us trying to, as we up the percentage units that we require and moving from 80% AMI to 60% AMI for rentals in our housing policy, what incentives might be needed to help folks get to those desired levels. So we're going to start discussing those. And on the heels of that, or once that's behind us, I believe the board's next big item will be that we'll be turning to what is a housing trust fund and the conversation about what that looks like and how that's done. And then finally, I would just say that I was reminded of this when Keith and I gave our presentation to the Nelson County Board of Supervisors. Right before that, we were sitting in, they were the first year, every region right now, or every jurisdiction in the region is doing a compensation study of some sort. And Nelson is really the first out of the gate to do their presentation to the board, and we were benefits to be able to sit in on that. But the bigger point, in the fall, we had an economic outlook, or an economic report that our economic and our finance team have been working with. It has talked about wage health, and it's stuck with me since then. I still don't have my understanding or my head wrapped around it. But our wages, starting back after the last Great Recession, dipped below where the state and the national area was, where we'd always been above. We've grown, but there was a dip where we dropped below those two areas. And I bring it up in the housing spectrum because that day it's always talked about, well, if you can't afford the housing you're going to get into, people that work here go somewhere else. But if you're not paying wages that are strong, then they can't afford the units they get into. My concern is somebody that's thinking of incentives. If I incentivize under the current wage area and I get people into units, if I don't have their wage health continuing to grow, they're going to be priced out again in 2 or 3 years. So that wage one is one that, as a policymaker, is a conundrum that I'm brainstorming quite a bit. So I just thought I'd share that in this perspective as well. But that's what I have to offer. I'm just grateful for everyone to be here today. Yes, sir.
Can I build on your first comment around UVA? And I really appreciated your approach and candor in your comments. And what I'd like to say in addition is that I don't think Fred has read our proposal yet. Because he talked about the proposals being from 50 to 80% AMI. That is not what our proposals put on the table. Our proposals go down to having embedded project-based vouchers, 30% AMI, all the way through 8% AMI. For the very specific reasons that you talked about, is that we can't just be looking at that upper end of the spectrum. It has to be across the entire spectrum. However, the challenge point, and this is going to be a conversation for both the city and the county when we get to this point, if we're chosen and if we get to this point, which is UVA is bringing free land to the table. That in and of itself is an insufficient subsidy to reach those levels of depth of affordability. And fundamentally, you know, I've heard sort of anecdotally that there is some heartburn potentially around the idea of both from the city perspective and the county perspective. UVA should be handling that fundamentally. Like the idea of putting county dollars on the table or city dollars on the table to kind of bridge the gap between free land and what the subsidy is necessary is going to be a hard one to sell. And I want to lay that out there because I think we are going to have a conversation about that on some level. But fundamentally, going back to UVA, in our proposal as well, we have also asked them to go beyond, to think creatively around how they can bring additional value to the table beyond free land. They have stated clearly that they're not going to be providing direct dollar subsidy, and I think that's probably a hard line. But there are other creative ways they could play a partner role that would help close that gap effectively. And so that's all in our proposal as we put it out there.
Not to drag us in, but I'll just say briefly, I mean, it's not that we have heartburn, it's not just having heartburn about it, we don't have the money for it. And I don't think it's acceptable that UVA has a $2 billion budget, a $14.5 billion endowment, including $2 billion unrestricted, and not contribute any money, but I'll leave it at that.
This has been a lot of fun, but it's time to go home.
Yes.
We didn't mean to trigger that. So where I'm at, we are at the end of our agenda. I appreciate that. I'm sure this could continue for quite a bit of conversation, but this is what I'm talking about when we say, please, our meetings are public. The round table is a lot of time where you get into things that are interesting. So just being able to listen to our meetings, I encourage others to do that on a monthly and quarterly basis as we meet. So thank you everyone for allowing us to get this meeting done. Our next meeting of the full partnership will be June 28th, 2023. I believe that's a Wednesday. And it's 2 to 3:30 p.m. And with that, if there is no objection, we will adjourn today's meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.